Hi there and welcome back to my channel. My name is Benin and I'm an online English teacher from the UK. Today I would like to talk to you about a very important sound in the standard Southern British English accent, and that is the glottal T. I get lots of questions about this sound, so I hope that the video clears up some of these questions and doubts. Before we dive in with today's topic, I wanted to let you know that I'm moving my teaching to Instagram these days rather than YouTube. I'm just doing a few final videos. So if you'd like to stay connected, please check out the links to my Instagram in the description. So let's get started with the glottal T. First of all, what is the glottal T? Well, it's one possible pronunciation for the T sound in English that happens in certain situations. You can hear it really clearly in this word, football, football. So can you hear that I'm not using a clear T here, football, but actually something different, football. So what I'm doing is I'm stopping the airflow for a moment when I'm saying f. I'm just stopping the air flowing and then I'm saying ball. So what's actually happening when we make glottal T is a glottal stop. Let me explain what this is. It helps to know that the glottis is an area of our voice box, our larynx, that contains the vocal cords, the space around them, and also the space between them. What we're doing when we make a glottal stop is we're closing our vocal cords for just a moment, as you can see in this diagram. One good way to practice getting a sense of this glottal stop, this glottal closure, is practicing saying vowel sounds and cutting them off. So I'm going to give you an example with the sound E. I'm going to say it and I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to stop the airflow. For example, E, 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 E. And this sense of when it stops, when the airflow stops, that's when we're closing our vocal cords. So have a try. I know it feels pretty strange to do this exercise, but have a try. E, E, E. Can you feel when you're kind of stopping the airflow? That's the glottal stop, or the glottal T. In British English, we call it the glottal T, but it's represented in the International Phonetic Alphabet by this symbol, which looks a little bit like a question mark. So now we know what the glottal T is, let's talk about where we find this sound in standard Southern British English. First of all, we find it in a word when the T is at the end of the syllable and before a consonant. For example, in football, the T is at the end of the syllable foot, and the next syllable starts with a B, a consonant sound. The same we can see in an example like Scotland. The T is at the end of the syllable Scot, and it's followed by a L consonant sound. Again, in the word partner, the T is at the end of the syllable part, and the next sound is a N, and consonant sound N. So let's practice these together. We've got football, Scotland, and partner. Great. I should say here we don't find the glottal stop in the standard accent when a T is before a vowel sound. For example, in these words, better, water, beautiful. In all of these cases, we have a clear T because the T comes before a schwa sound and a water, better, beautiful. Okay, I should say here that you may hear some people saying things like better, water, beautiful in the UK. This is absolutely fine. There's no problem with this. It's just can be a little bit stigmatized in the UK and it's not considered 100% standard. Doesn't mean it's wrong at all. It just means if you're interested in this standard accent, that's not probably something that you will hear. Finally, another place that we do get the glottal stop in the standard Southern British English accent is often at the end of a word when a word ends in T. For example, in these situations. So in these situations, there is a little bit of a difference in terms of what's considered completely standard, what's considered not so standard, but you do also hear it. In the first one, it was, you can hear the glottal stop here, it was. That's considered completely standard because the T comes before a consonant sound, W, it was. That's a pretty standard pronunciation in this accent. The second one, but I, is slightly less standard because there the T is coming before a vowel sound. So many people in this situation would also say but I with a clear T. It really depends how clear, how careful we're being in our speech. If I'm talking to my friends and family, I'd probably say but I. And if I'm reading the news or doing something really formal, I'd probably say but I, but I. The third example is when we get a T totally at the end of a phrase. I always think about that. With glottal T. Again, here it really depends. It's not completely standard, but it completely depends on how formal we're being, how careful we're being. A lot of the time I would use a glottal T in that final that. But if I'm being really formal and careful or want to be clear, I might use a clear T. I always think about that. To digest and process this information, I'd like you to take a look at the phrase that I'm going to put on the screen, pause the video and think about where you might find a glottal T and where you might find a clear T. So now I'm going to read it naturally, as I usually would. The network's bad. It would be better to wait a minute. The network's bad. It would be better to wait a minute. So here in network, we are going to have a glottal T because it's T at the end of a syllable before a consonant sound, W. We would also be very likely to have a glottal T in it would because it's T across a word before a consonant sound of W again. In better, we're most likely going to have a clear T because it's before a vowel sound, better. And the same goes for waiter. It would be quite likely that we would have a clear T sound because it's before a vowel, waiter, although some people in really quick informal speech would also say waiter, waiter. That might happen. And finally, in minute, that's at the end of the phrase. If we're speaking really naturally, really quickly in an informal setting, we might say minute. And if we're being really careful, really precise, we might say minute. So I hope all of that helps you get a sense for the glottal T, how to make it and where to use it. If you'd like to practice more exercises about the glottal T with me in class, please get in touch via the links in the description. So thanks very much for watching and hope to see you soon. Bye.